Hi folk, what we're going to do today is we're going to be having a look at some design process stuff. This particular video is going to be about the design specifications, and in a few other videos we'll get down into some of those later parts of that design process. Okay, so this is the really fun part, the really cool stuff, but before we get into that cool stuff we need to talk about specifications, which I know can be a little bit boring, but unless you get that stuff right, the design parts of things really falls apart. Okay, so before we get into the specifications, let's talk about the overall design process. Up the top there, one of the first things that usually happens is we've got the brief and the concepts and those sorts of things, and then as you get down towards the middle of the meat here, you've got the concepts and the development, and then towards the bottom of the process you'll have a variety of different things that will happen from reiterative development, and you have prototype development and prototypes, and then final outcomes out towards the bottom, and there'll be focus groups and things that go backwards, up and down all the time. There'll be plenty of iteration, especially if you're doing it right, and that's how it goes. These are the number of things that are generally in there. The order that they happen can change substantially. Some people like to draw it in a circle, but these things are usually there. So before we get too much further, let's have a look at the brief, right? The brief is usually something that the client hands to you, and then you look at it and say, let's have a talk about this before you pay me to do it. And then you have a little bit of a conversation about it, and once you've had a conversation about it, you've nutted that brief out a bit, you've taken it from 1 page to a 5 page to a half a ream document, and then from there, that's where you finally can go and start knocking out, signing contracts and knocking out specifications. Alright, some of you may be wondering why we're wanting to add in extra specifications for our clients, right? Why are we giving ourselves more work to do? Why are we giving ourselves more hurdles to get through to be able to get our good design? Partly it's because a better design hits the best specifications, okay? And to justify that, to explain what I mean by that, we should probably have a look at the cost to change graph, right? I don't know what it's actually called, but that's what I call it, right? So let's have a look at this graph. What we've got here is we've got a timeline that goes along the bottom of our design process. We've got our contract at the start there, concepts, development, prototype, and final production and sales all the way down the end there. And then we've got these two big swooping lines. All right, so those swooping lines, it starts off in the top here, this top one, oh by the way, it's high and low on this axis, and it starts off with a really high opportunity for change at the start, right? When you're starting out, before you really do any concepts, you've got a really good opportunity there to be able to change. But as you get further on the line there, before you ship products out the door, if you're wanting to do any changes then, you've got a very small opportunity to be able to make changes there. Okay? Also, that other swooping line, which gets higher towards the end of the graph, that is the cost, right? The cost and the difficulty of making any of those changes. Right? So if you want to make any change at the start, it doesn't cost you much and you've got a huge opportunity to do it. As you get further and further along the process, it gets more and more expensive to make any changes, and you have less opportunity to be able to do it. That's basically what this is. What this here is saying is that you don't want to be the guy that designed the tap that went out the door, got to all the customers, and only then did they realise that when they put their hand underneath that most essential tap, it only worked for 50% of the population because of their skin colour. Alright? You want to be the guy that right at the start you've said in your specifications, this tap must work for all skin colours. You want to be that guy, not the other one. That's why we're looking at this graph, and that's why we're making sure that we do enough specifications now and that they are the right ones. So let's have a look at some of those specifications that we want to be adding in there, right? The client didn't mention anything about aesthetics, which is odd because they usually do, but they didn't, right? You always want to include something about good aesthetics because you are a design team and you're an engineering team, and that's what you do. You make things look good. Also cost effective. right? They did have that in the kind of subtext of the brief, but it wasn't in the specifications. You want to make sure that it's nice and clear, so you put it in the specifications. All right. Also, it needs to be available and it needs to be able to work in all weather. All right. It needs to be able to right from January all the way through the year, right to December. It needs to be able to work through all of those seasons. And also it needs to be able to work and shine that light from dusk all the way through till dawn. Okay, so those are some really key specifications that weren't quite highlighted in those specs that you want to have in there. And the last one isn't really a new spec, it's just a bit of a change. And that one is the stuff about vandals. They said that it needed to be vandal proof, and that was changed. Okay, that was changed from being vandal proof to being vandal resistant. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if somebody wants to take out your product, whatever it is, if they really try to, if they drive along at it with a tank, they can do it, all right? However, 99% of the time, the vandals that are going to be kicking and hitting and destroying your bollard is going to be the vandal that's walking along drunk in the middle of the night and gives it a bit of a kick at that bottom height there, all right? So it means, and one of the things they determined from that was that actually they don't need the top of it to be easily vandal proof, they just need that bottom 200 to 300 mils to be vandal proof, because that's where most of the damage is going to be hit at. All right, so that was just a slight change on it after doing some research. So that is the design specification section. That is the part that you've had a look at those specs, you've gone out there, you've had a bit of a research, you've looked at what other people's products are, you've looked at how the product is used, you've looked at what the company actually wants, and you've just added some in there and maybe changed one or two of their specifications as well, so that you can get a much better project. Cool, thank you.